Hi there, welcome to my channel. In this particular video, we are coming to look at 5 Excel features for financial modelers and data analysts. Alright, 5 features of Microsoft Excel for financial modelers and data analysts. Alright, so that is the focus of this video. So what are we coming to look at specifically? Now these features, you might be familiar with them, but what I've done is that I'm not just going to introduce you to them, I'm going to demonstrate them using use cases. All right, so practical use cases, of course. So you might not want to skip any part of this video, even though you might be familiar with some of the features, but I assure you that every part of this video is going to prove useful. So stick to the video, don't skip any part of it, and please consider liking the video and leaving your comments in the comment section if you find it useful. And also consider subscribing to the channel if this is your first time on my channel, and also consider sharing the video with others so they can also benefit. Alright, so without wasting much time, let's look at the 5 features we're coming to look at in this video. The first one, as you can see, is the data table. Okay, the data table feature. The second one is pivot tables. Alright, the third one is data validation. The fourth one is Power Query. Alright, and then the last one is grouping. So as you can see, I have data for use cases. So do not skip any part of the video. We have amazing stuff to cover in this short while. Alright, now the first one we want to look at is the data table. So what's the data table used for? It is mostly used for performing sensitivity and what if analysis in Excel. So whenever you want to perform a sensitivity or what if analysis or scenario analysis, we usually employ the data table to do that. And how do we do that? So this particular data you are seeing here was actually extracted from my DCF model. So if you are interested in learning about the DCF model, how to construct one, then kindly look for my video on DCF valuation model, and you understand everything. I've built that particular financial model from scratch, so you can follow along. All right, so we have these assumptions here. We have weighted average cost of capital, then we have the growth rate. Now these two figures were used to construct the present value of the unlevered free cash flows we see here. Right, these two are used to forecast these particular values here, and then these values are used in calculating our enterprise value. So it means that our WACC and then the growth rate here are affecting this particular value 441910. That is the enterprise value of the hypothetical firm we looked at. Alright, so when you look at it, it means that at a weighted average cost of capital, which is actually the cost of capital of the firm, and a growth rate, the growth rate is applying to the continuing value. Alright, this is what we call continuing value. That is the value after our forecast period. Alright, this is the value after our forecast period, and this particular growth rate is used in calculating this particular value, which was converted into the present value. Okay, which was converted into the present value, and this present value plus the present value of the cash flows was used in calculating our enterprise value here, which means that at a WACC of 10% and a growth rate of 3%, our enterprise value was $441,910, $441,910. All right. Now, in financial modeling, what we do is that these are assumptions. Okay, so we usually sensitize our values to see that depending on what happens in the future, our model will prove useful. So we want to make our model as useful as possible, and that is when sensitivity analysis comes in. All right, so what we do is that we want to sensitize this particular value using the WACC and then the growth rates. So what if the WACC is no longer 10%, and what if the growth rate is no longer 3%? What will happen to this enterprise value? And that is what we can use quickly by the data table to solve. All right, so what we do is that when you come to this particular table here, we have a row for WACC and then a column for the growth rate, and the value we want to sensitize is our enterprise value. So I'll link that here, and then I'm going to so let me actually cut this and put it here. Alright, and then what I'm going to do is that I'm actually going to format this particular area here as a percentage. So selecting it, I'll come here and select my percentage. And we know that our work is 10%, so I'll go down to 8% there. And this can be increased by 0.01. Sorry, so I'll have equals this plus 0.01 there, and that'll give me 9%. And holding my shift, I can select here Control R to copy that across. And I also come here and do same for my growth rate. So I know that my growth rate, so first of all, let me format here as a percentage. And I know that my growth rate is 3%. So I'll go down to 1% there. And then I can do this plus 0.01. And that'll give me 2%. I can copy this down using Control D. Alright. So we know that our original assumptions are 10% WACC and 3% growth rate, and that is giving us an enterprise value of this. Now, what if the growth rate reduces or actually becomes 1% and the WACC becomes 9%? What will be our enterprise value? That is what data tables use as help us to solve. So I'm going to what we do is I'm going to select the entire area here and go to my data tab, and then you see what if analysis here. I'll click the drop down there, come to data table and click on data table, and this is the data table dialog box here. And the first argument here is telling us row input cell. So my row input cell, which is this particular row input here, is my WACC. So I'll come and select my 10% WACC here, and my column input cell is the 3% here. So I'll select my 3% for the column, which is here, and then I'll hit OK. And there we see that the entire table has been populated with the figures. So quickly, let me format. So let me quickly select these values and format them. Go to my home tab. So I can actually use Control 1, and I'll go to number, format cells, go to number, and I want to use comma separator with 0 decimal places and put my negatives in brackets, and then I'll hit OK. And so this is what we have here. So how do I know that this is sensitizing this particular value perfectly? So when we are saying that when the growth rate is 3% and the WACC is 10%, this is the enterprise value, and that is what we have here. Alright, this is 10% and 3%. So this means that this is working perfectly. So when actually our WACC becomes 12% and the growth rate is now 5%, this is going to be our enterprise value. If the growth rate is 1% and the WACC is 11%, this is going to be our enterprise value. So this is how we use data tables to sensitize assumptions within our financial model. All right, so that is it for our data table. Now quickly, let's go to pivot table. Now pivot table is another powerful Microsoft Excel tool used to calculate, summarize, and analyze data that lets you see comparisons, patterns, and trends within your data. All right, so you can have a large set of data, but what pivot table does is that it helps you to summarize that particular large data quickly and easily. All right, so to be able to use your pivot table, you should first of all format your range. This is what you call a range. Okay, you have to format it into a table, an Excel table. So how do we do that? Clicking inside any of the range, go to, you can just click, or you can just use Control T to access the table, create table dialog, as you can see here. And as soon as you do that, it selects your entire range for you. So I know that everything here has been selected. It has selected it to the very last value here, which is row 256,970 rows there. So I have my everything selected, so I can click OK. Alright, so let me click home, and this is going to take me to the home tab. Alright, so we have the home tab there, and as you can see, this is a very large data, over 256 rows, 256,000 rows of data. Okay, so but with pivot tables, we can be able to summarize this quickly and easily, and also derive some insights. So this is our data. We have the row ID category, we have store category, we have sales manager, date, sales revenue, all right, margin, city, and then we have profit. So this is our data for us. We want to quickly summarize this data using the pivot table. So how do we do that? Now that you have selected or formatted our range as a table, we can quickly clicking inside the table or coming to the data and table design tab here, we can see summarize with pivot table. All right, summarize with pivot table. I'll click that, and that is going to generate the pivot table dialog box here. And this is table, the name of the table, table 3, right there. And I want to put my pivot table on the existing worksheet, and the location I want it is right here, and then I'll hit OK. So inserting your pivot table here will result in overwriting of existing data in the sheet. So that doesn't matter, I'll hit yes. Alright. So our pivot table has been inserted for us, and we have the pivot table fields here. That is what we are going to use to analyze our data. And with the fields, we have 4 fields within our pivot table fields. We have the filters, we have columns, rows, and then values. The values are for the numerical columns within our data or our table, and then the rows here are for the other non-numerical sections. The filter here is used to filter a particular pivot table. All right, so let's look at how each of these is going to play out. So we have our pivot table here, and the first thing we want to do is to analyze our sales managers performance by revenue and profits. So our sales managers, we have a column for sales managers. I can actually see that from here, so I'll just check the box around or by the sales manager column here, and that is going to bring it to the rows. That is what I want it to be. Or one thing you can also do is to actually click and drag this onto the rows. All right, that's another way. Then we want to analyze that by sales revenue, and automatically that comes into our value section for me. That is fine. And then also by profits. All right, so we have that, and this is not formatted properly, so I can just select everything there, come to the design. All right, so I'll right click here, and then I'll say format, number format here. I'll go there, click on number, use comma separator, 0 decimal places, put negatives in brackets, and then I'll hit OK. And that has formatted the first one. I'll do same for my second column. So I'll come here, click on number, 0 decimal places, use comma separator, and put my negatives in brackets. I'll hit OK, and this is formatted properly. And then what I want to do is to sort this data from descending from largest to smallest. So I'll hit that. OK. Alright, so this is what we want. So as you can see, pivot table has quickly summarized the entire data, over 256,000 rows of data, in this simple format for me. So that is how powerful the pivot table is. Alright, so that is the first one. Then I also want to look at my performance, city, or let me say geographical I want to see my geographical geographical performance by revenue and profit. All right, so let me quickly format this, bolding it, and I can use same control, selecting these particular. I can use control 1, and then this is going to open the format cells dialog. I'll go to alignment, and then under horizontal, text alignment horizontal, I want to use center across selection. I'll leave every other thing like that, and then I'll hit OK. So this is going to put it under the center for me, and I'm going to increase the font size a bit. All right, so that's fine. Also, I want to cut this and paste here, and also do the same thing, control 1, come to alignment, horizontal, center across selection, and then I'll hit OK. So we want to analyze the geographical performance by revenue and profit. Now, what is our geographical location here? Now, instead of coming here to insert another pivot table, what we can do is that we can simply copy this particular pivot table here. So Control C, and then I'll come here and then Control V to paste. All right, so I've copied this particular pivot table, and we are done with the sales manager. So I'll just click here, I'll just come here and then uncheck that particular box there. We still have our sales revenue and sum of profit for us. We are going to change the names very soon. So now I want to analyze by city, so I'll check the city there, and then just like that we have our city performance here. So we have the city and then the city performance. Now with the city performance, I also want to look at the percentage of profit of the total. So the percentage of the profit as a total of the total profit we are seeing here. So how do we do that? I'll just right click this value, go to show value as percentage of grand total. Okay, and just like that, we can see that Alabama contributes the highest or is making we are making our highest profit from Alabama, 55%. All right, that's huge. And then 16.78% is from Newfoundland, 28.17% is from Ontario, and then the least profit is coming from Texas. All right, so this is how we can do our analysis using pivot tables. And what we can do is that because I've formatted my profits into this, I'm going to insert another profit column there, and that is going to be my profit. So clicking, I can drag it and bring it in between those two figures there, and then quickly let me format my number here, the same formatting, 0 decimal places, use comma separator and put negatives in brackets, and we have that. And I'm going to sort these from highest, largest to smallest, just like that. That is how powerful pivot tables can look. All right, so just like that, we have our pivot table here. And one thing or best practice is to name your pivot table. So to name your pivot table, you can just click inside your pivot table, come to pivot table analyze, and name your pivot table. But another way is to just right click inside your pivot table and then come to pivot table options. Then you see pivot table name here, and it's stored as pivot table 3. I want to change that to sales managers performance, and hit OK. I'll also come here and do same for the geographical performance. So I'll come here and then go to pivot table options, and then I'm going to have geographical performance there, and then I'll hit enter. That has renamed it for me, and I can also rename these particular columns here. So this is so double clicking inside there, I can have my sales managers, and since we already have a column here as sales managers, okay, it's sales manager, so I can say sales managers and hit enter. And I also come here, instead of sum of sales, I can say sales revenue, and then I'll leave a space in front, and then I'll hit OK. I'll also come here and do same for my profits. So I'll have profits there with the space before the profit is okay. I'll hit enter, and I'll give you my profit. And then I'll also come here and format this as city and leave a space in front and hit OK. Come here and rename my sales revenue, leave a space in front and hit OK. I'll come here, profit 2, I'll cancel the profit there, and I'm going to leave a space in front of the profit and hit OK. And then this is my profit. I'll have my profit percentage right there, and then I'll hit OK. So just like that, our pivot table has been summarized for us nicely. Then one thing we want to do is to insert what we call a slicer. Alright, so quickly selecting one of my pivot tables, I'll go to pivot table analyze, and then right here you see insert slicer. I'll insert a slicer, and what a slicer does is that it slices our data for us. That's what it does. It slices and dies our data. Alright, so I want to insert a slicer for category here, and then I'll hit OK. So this is my slicer. I can click and then drag it here nicely. And what this means is that this is category 1, products. So product category 1. When I click there, it's going to slice this particular pivot table for only category 1 products performance. So this is the amount of revenue John Bosco made with category 1 with and the corresponding profit. Alright. So when it comes to category 1 profit, John Bosco has contributed has made a sales revenue of over $30 million and a profit of 60 million. Alright. Then when it comes to category 2, so my Excel is slowing down, but let's wait for it. So when it comes to category 2 here, we see that Money Wado is making the highest revenue like that. Now what we want to do is that we want to format this particular now at this point, because we selected only one pivot table, which is this particular one, the slicer is working on only one of the pivot tables. So what we do is that for it to work on both sides, we are going to report connections. So to do that, I'm going to right click on my slicer, go to report connections here. I'll click that, and then right currently it has selected only the sales manager's performance pivot table here. I want to add the geographical performance as well, and then I'll hit OK. So now when I filter by my category, it's going to filter my performance here as well for me. So when I click on category 10 here, it's going to filter this as well. When I click that, it is filtering so you see that the figures are changing as well. When I click on number 4 here, it is changing these figures. Let me come here and select one, and we see that it has filtered these ones for me as well. So that is how we use our the slicer here as well. Then I can come here to clear the filter there, and everything turns into the normal data for me. Now the last thing we want to do with the pivot table is to insert a visualization. Alright, so what you can do is that Still clicking inside one of my tables here, I can come to the pivot table analyze ribbon here, and then you see recommended pivot table. Sorry, you see pivot chart here. So you can just click on pivot chart, and that is going to send you to the pivot chart section here, and it is giving you what a recommended chart for you. All right, so this is how you insert the pivot chart within your pivot table to give a clearer view of your data, or a clearer understanding of your data. So this is how you use our pivot table within Microsoft Excel. All right, so let's move on to data visualization. Sorry, data validation. All right, now when it comes to data validation, what it does is that it is a control system. All right, data validation is a data entry control system that restricts the type of data or value you enter into a particular cell. All right, and one of the common uses of data validation in Microsoft Excel is to create a drop-down list. All right, it's actually to create a drop-down list. So how do we do that? So this particular scenario here is assumptions and drivers I have already done in one of my videos. So these are cases. We have a base case, or what we call a normal case scenario. We have the upside case, all right, where the economy, we are predicting that the economy is going to be favorable, okay, is going to grow, and so we are predicting that our values, our revenue growth rate is going to be very high. This is 10%, which is the base case. This is 12% for revenue, which is the upside case, and this is 8% for the downside case. All right, then we have an active case here. Now the active case, what it does is that it shows the currently selected case. All right, that's what it does, and we can do that using the choose function. We use that using the choose function. Now remember, we've done this within the DCF model again, so you can go and watch my DCF model and know how to construct that. So quickly, let's use the choose function to make a selection between our base case, our upside case, our downside case, and then we can use data validation to be able to choose between the cases. All right, so that we can know which of the case is appearing within the active case. So let's see how that plays out. So I have equals choose, and then the first argument here is the index number. What's the index number? The index number is going to be the scenario, the particular scenario or the particular case we are selecting here, and I'm going to anchor that using F4. The second argument is value. So we have value 1. So you actually need only one value to be able to complete the choose function. The other ones are optional. So here we have 3 of the cases. So we're going to select 3 values. So the first value is going to be my first revenue case here. I'll have comma, and then I'll come and select the second revenue case for my upside case as well. And then I'm going to select the third, which is for the downside case revenue, and then I'll hit close my parentheses and hit enter. Now this is giving me a value error here because this particular cell here is empty. So quickly we are coming to use the data validation to be able to fill this particular empty cell here, so that we will have a drop down list of the cases, the 3 cases, so that we know the one to select at a particular point in time, and that is going to display within the active cell here. So actually I can just go ahead and using my shift, I can copy this across using Control R, and then also copy this down as well using Control D. So it's all returning value error here because of the empty cell you are having here. So quickly, to create your drop down list using data validation, you actually need a list of the cases. So quickly coming to the top left corner here, I'll have cases, and then I'll have base, I'll have the upside, I have upside there, and then I also have downside. Now for base case, I'm going to assign a value of 1, for upside value of 2, downside value of 3, like that. Alright, then after getting this, I'll select where I want my drop down list to be, and then I'll come to my data tab, come to the data tools section here, and then this particular drop down here is data validation. I'll click that, and then I'll click the first option, data validation, and then this is the data validation dialog box. Okay, the first argument here is saying allow, and then you can see any value here. I'll click on the drop down, and then I'll click on list. All right, and then that's going to open the source argument here for me. So from which source, where is the list located? So I'll click here, and then come and then drag or pick my list there for me, and then I'll come here and expand it, and then leaving every other thing the same, I can just click OK. And then let's see, now the drop down list has been created. So let's see, if I click on 1, I know that's the base case. Let's see if these base case assumptions are appearing in the active case. And here they are appearing nicely, but we have everything here has been formatted as a percentage, which is not correct. So I can just come here, and I'm going to format that using Control 1. I'll come to custom, and I'll scroll up, come to my 0 here, and with the 0 I'm going to put in quotes days. That is actually my payable days, receivable days, as well as my inventory days. So I'll put that in quotes days, as you can see here, and then I'll hit OK, and that is going to format that into the days for me. Now let's look at the error message here. Formula result in error. Alright, so because of the value error we had in the first place, that's why it is still having that. So I can just ignore errors. Okay, ignore the error, and then I can copy that again across using Control R, and that is going to remove those error messages for me. Control D. This has changed the formatting again. So quickly, let me go to my formatting and do that once again. So I already have it here. So encode this, and then I'll hit OK, and that is going to format everything for me nicely. Now let me freeze the panes here. So I'll come to my view tab, and then I'll have freeze panes and then freeze the panes. So let me scroll down to my active case, and then come to my case switch and switch to case number 3, and we see that that has formatted or selected the downside case here for me, 840 28 15 40, 840 28 15 4, 840 28 15 4, like that. The other ones remain the same for all the cases, so they are not changing. This is the first 1 2 3 4 5 6. So it is actually the first 6, okay, the first 5 cases assumptions that are changing. Okay, so that is what you will see changing. So when I come to my upside case here as well, you see that the values have changed. So that is how we use data validation together with the other functions we've seen here to be able to make our financial model dynamic. This can also be applied in data analytics as well. All right, so data validation is a powerful tool for ensuring data integrity and control. All right, so the next one we want to look at is the Power Query feature. Now, Power Query, if you ask me, is one of the most powerful features within Microsoft Excel, and that is because it helps us to automate our ETL process. That is extract, transform, and load. Okay, so when it comes to extracting, transforming, and loading data nowadays in Microsoft Excel as well as Microsoft Power BI desktop, you need the Power Query to be able to transform, extract, transform, and load your data, and then you can perform your analysis on that data. So we have messy data here, and we are going to use Power Query to clean and transform this data into a nice format for us to analyze. All right. So to be able to access the Power Query I think is available from Excel 2016 onwards. It is an inbuilt function within Excel and Power BI. Okay. So to access your the Power Query, you go to your Data tab. Now, first of all, we want to format this as a table. All right. Now, the reason why you format data as a table is because a table actually has advantages over ranges. All right, this is actually a range. Any data you have in Excel which is not formatted as a table is called a range. Okay, so to be able to have a better data analysis, you need to always format your data into a table so that it will be organized well. So quickly, I can just have Control T as we did previously. That selected everything for me. So my table do not have headers. All right, do not have headers. So I'll just click OK, and this is going to format the table for me. Now that the data has been formatted into a table for us, we can go to our Power Query editor. We call it Power Query editor. All right, so I'll come to my data tab, and then I'll come here. This is get data. This is from table or range. Okay, so I'll click on table or range. You can actually come here, get data. One of the advantages of the Power Query is that you can connect to different sources of data. Okay, so as you can see, it says launch Power Query editor here. You can actually launch the Power Query editor here directly, but I want to launch the Power Query editor using this particular data here. So that's what I'm coming to do, but you can actually launch it from here directly. So you can actually connect to different data sources. So as you can see here, from Excel workbook, from text or CSV file, from XML file, JSON, PDF, folder, you can connect to any source of data you want, from SQL Server, from Microsoft Access database, from analysis and all the database, from Oracle database and IBM, MySQL, everything you want to connect to, you can connect to that particular, and it's all for free. All right. So I want to use this particular data here. So I'll come to the options here and click on from table or range. I'll click on that. So this is our Power Query editor, and our data is loading. So this is our data. Now this is the Power Query editor window, and as you can see, it is similar to Microsoft Excel, but what this does is that it's a very powerful tool. All right, this is the table we have loaded into Power Query. All right, so it's showing us here as a table, and then this is file. With the file, you can close and load to, and all that. So I'm coming to look at that in a jiffy, and then you have refresh here. Now, what Power Query does is that it automates our boring data cleaning tasks for us. All right, so in case you have a data that is being uploaded, let's say monthly, you have a sales data that is being uploaded monthly, or financial data, 6 monthly or yearly or quarterly, what you do is that after cleaning the first quarter's data, when the next quarters come, all you have to do is to just click this refresh here, and it's going to apply the formatting you have done for the first quarter data to the second quarter, so that you don't have to go through the process all over again. That is how powerful Power Query is. All right, this is just an introductory video, so we are going to look at it in a full video some other time. All right, so for now, let's look at the features. So we have the home tab here, then we have properties, advanced editor, manage, choose columns, remove columns, keep rows and all that. Split column, this is for splitting columns. You can do all of that. You can use change the data type of a particular column. This is the transform, so replace values, use first row as headers and all that. So this is a very powerful tool. Then you have the transform tab here, which is having Group by is another powerful tool. Use first row as headers, transpose, data type, fill down, and pivot. These are powerful features within the Microsoft Power Query editor. Okay, so what we want to do first is that we know that the column 3 is actually our column headers. So what do we have to do? We can just, using my shift, I can just select this and come to my home. And what I'll do is that I'll remove rows there, remove top rows. All right, remove top rows, and that is going to help me select the number of rows I want to remove. And I want to remove the first two rows. Okay, the first two rows there, so I'll click 2 and then I'll hit OK, and that's going to remove the first two rows. And one thing about this is that whatever transformation you are doing here is being recorded in the applied steps section here. So this is the data source, this is our data source, and that means that, you see, this data source, you cannot alter it. That means that our data source is always intact for us. It will not change. All the changes you are making here is not going to affect your original data. That is the meaning. All right, so the source is protected, but it has changed the type. The type here is talking about the data type. So you can see that it has added time to our dates, which we do not want. We are going to remove that. Then the first transformation that we actually did was to remove the top rows, which we did. And then I'll also come to my transform tab, and then I'll come here, use first row as headers, use first row as headers, and then I'll hit that, and that is going to convert these into the headers for me, just like that. All right, just like that. Then with my order date, I'll select this particular order date here, and then I'll come to date, and okay, so I'll come to my home tab, and then I have the data type here, and then I'm going to select date only, removing the time. So I'll say add as new step, and that has removed it for me. I'll also come here and do same for the delivery date as well. So selecting that, I'll convert it to date, and that has done that for me. All right, then we have order ID, delivery date, customer ID, customer age, customer gender, zone. We have all of that. Now this product here, we don't need it because we have product category and subcategory, so we don't need the name of the product, which is kind of long here. So I'll just come here, and then under the home tab or even transform tab, I can just so under the home tab, I can just say remove columns. All right, and that is done for me. I'll come here, and we have unit price, we have order quantity, we have the sales price, we have status, reason, and then rating. Then we can even add extra columns here. So what I can do is that I'll just come here, order quantity, and then using my shift, I can select this as well, and then I'll come to add column. The adding column, I'll come to standard here, and then I'll say multiply, and that's going to add a new column for me here called multiplication. I'll just double click there and name it to my sales revenue. All right, so I've inserted a new column there called sales revenue. All right, then this is the unit price or the unit cost, and then this is the quantity produced. So what I can do is that is going to give us our cost price as well. So I'm just showing you how to use the Power Query in this particular video. We are not actually using it to do any data analysis in particular. We are just demonstrating what you can use the Power Query to do. All right, so that is a brief introduction to the Microsoft Power Query editor. All right, the Power Query editor is a powerful tool that you can choose to explore. It will help you to automate your data extraction, transformation, and then the loading process. All right, so that is just by the way. So after you are done with everything, every transformation you can do here, you just come to the home tab here, and then you see close and load. All right, so I'll just say close and load, or close and load to. When you click on close and load to, it's going to open this dialog box for you, and then you see import data as a table, as a pivot table report, as a pivot chart, create only connection, and I want to create a table here using a new sheet. So I'll just click OK, and that's going to open a new sheet for me, and my data is going to load onto a new clean worksheet for me to work with. All right, so as you can see, it is loading the data from the right corner here, and we see 67,729 rows have been loaded onto our worksheet. So this has been loaded as an Excel table for me right there, and then I can quickly summarize with pivot table, or even using the Power Pivot to do that. Okay, so that is it for Power Query. The last one we want to do here is grouping. Now this is one um, of the most useful features of Excel for financial modelers. All right, and what it does is that it helps you to switch between different levels of data complexity. Okay, it is better than hiding rows or columns within your data. So that is what it does. Now let's look at how that is going to work. So let me close this. So let's look at how that is going to work. So this is a financial model. We built 3-statement financial model in one of my videos, actually my first video on financial modeling. And so we want to group this data. So we have the assumptions section. We have the statement of profit or loss, the income statement, the statement of financial position or the balance sheet, with their models or their forecasts. We have the statements of cash flows, we have supporting schedules, and then we have charts and graphs, which the chart is not showing here, but the data is showing. So we want to group this data so that we can have a better view of the data we are having here. So what I will do is that to group this data, I'll select the columns for my assumptions. So using Shift, I can just hold Shift and select the last one, and I'll go to my View tab. Sorry, I'll come to my Data tab, and then you see Outline, and then I'll click on Group, and that is going to group the data for me. I can now group this, and then you see that the Assumptions tab is hidden. When I click on the plus sign here, it's going to expand it for me. When I do this, it's going to collapse that, and I'll also select that of the statement of profit or loss or the income statement, select everything, and this time I'm going to use F4 to repeat the last action, and that's going to group it. I'll come here, select my assets through to my total liabilities and equity, and hit F4, and that's going to do that for me as well. I'll collapse that, and I'm going to do the same thing holding my shift. I can click up to here and then hit F4, and that's going to group the data for me. I'll come to my supporting schedules from PPE here up to this row 96 here, and then I'm going to have F4, that is going to group it for me. And then lastly, for my charts and graphs, I'm going to grab this up to here, and then I'm going to hit F4. That's going to repeat the last action for me. So just like that, we have grouped our data. This is very useful in financial modeling. As you can see, the data has been grouped nicely for us. So to be able to open all of them at once, you can open a particular section to be able to look at whatever you want to look at in this particular section, and then I can close that later. I can open the profit or loss and then look at that separately, and then I can close that. Now if you want to open all of them at once, I'll just come here and click these two here. It's going to open all of them. right? It's going to open all of them for me. To collapse all of them at once, I'll just click on number 1 here. That's going to collapse everything for me here. So that is how we use our grouping also in data analysis and financial modeling. So this is a video we have come. So we have come thus far in this particular video. We have looked at the top 5 features for financial modelers and data analysts. The first one we look at is the data table, and then we also looked at pivot tables, we looked at data visualization, we looked at Power Query, and then we also looked at grouping of data. So this is how we end the video. Please subscribe to the channel if this is your first time on my channel, and please don't forget to share the video and also like it if you find it useful, and don't forget to leave your comments in the comment section. I'm very much interested in that. All right, so thank you. I will see you in the next video.